will come out clearly in the next few days. We'll know maybe indeed they have been selling money to some people at very discounted rate. Maybe indeed the governor has been taking so much liberty to do and undo in that sector. Yeah, all of those things remain to be seen. Even in terms of the management of interest rates, remember that the MPC, Monetary Policy Committee, is not just one person. There are several members, including all the deputy governors and even people that are drawn from outside, who state their position and explain their position at every point in time. Of course, I just wrote an article which I titled, What Really Can Nigeria Do to Reduce Inflation?, where I try to broaden out the issues around inflation beyond interest rate management. We can see that as much as they've been increasing interest rate, now up to 18.5%, the monetary policy rate, inflation has also been climbing up. So there are things that people need to do serious research and see what other countries are doing. The US inflation rate is down to 4%, even though the Eurozone declared a recession last week. And UK, where I'm talking to you from, is still at 10%. They've not been able to wrestle down their inflation. So there are things and there are ideas that are coming out that people, I believe, that we should actually think about. So Emefiele's tenure is what it is. I think we're going to be talking about those issues around the gentleman. And of course, people believe that it is said that sometimes it's good not to be forgettable, to be consequential. I think he was a consequential central bank governor, plus or minus, for good or ill. People may hate him, some people may like him. A few people who are logical may try and understand some of the issues they went through and ask themselves, if I was in his shoes, what would I have done?
Now, let's take a look at this from another angle. Legally, the CBN Act of 2007, because we now have two central bank governors that have been suspended by the president. Some legal experts have said that any president shouldn't do that except you have the authority of 2/3 from the Senate, which is also ingrained in the law. We've seen Sanusi's own. It seemed that President Jonathan went away with that, even though I know that Lamido Sanusi at that time went to court, but I don't think he saw that through. Now we have a second central bank governor that has also been suspended by the president. So where does all this leave us, especially now we have the 10th National Assembly? Do you think that that law should be looked at again? Then let me also bring in this point, which is, you mentioned earlier that what would a central bank governor, what would he have done? During the Buhari administration, we saw when he came in 2015, President Jonathan handed him a debt of about 796 billion naira, about 856 billion naira, if I get the numbers correctly. President Buhari was going, and he left as the worst president so far in terms of our debt history. CBN's borrowing to President Buhari over about 23 trillion naira. CBN's, that's government borrowings from the central bank. So how does the central bank draw the line in terms of perhaps the governor or even the deputy governors in terms of their relationship with the executive? Can a central bank in Nigeria really be independent? Because Sanusi tried to do that. And Jonathan kicked him off, kicked him away.
Well, the discussion, the disagreement between Sanusi and Jonathan was not really around the issue of lending.
Yes, I think it was not.
However, if we want to open the books, you probably will find out that, somewhere along the line, a few favors would have been granted, only that our attention was not drawn to that. And also, secondly, in terms of the volume. So this tracks back to President Buhari and his ministers of finance. What kind of work were they doing? What kind of minister of finance did they have? Of course, government always needs money, and the work of a minister of finance is to produce the money however you get it. If the country is getting into trouble, you are supposed to be the magician, raise the money. Either you are borrowing from euro bonds, which are floating rate kind of borrowings that are very expensive out in Europe here, dollar denominated and co, or you are raising money locally, or however it is, or you are selling public properties to get money. I've seen that done several times in Nigeria, where they will put it as part of a budget that they are going to sell public property and use the money in a given year, which is crazy. So that's the issue. The central bank independence was an idea that came up about over a decade ago. The idea that central banks should be independent of the government. I think that some of these things that are happening now are showing that there's a need to look at some of those ideas again. Independent to what extent? How can it protect itself? Can the central bank go rogue on the government? And the idea of independence itself, does it not foster a moral hazard such that the central bank of any country begins to do and undo and say, look, I don't even report to the president? And then you're talking about independence. If a president of a country nominates and a central bank governor, how independent can he be? Nobody will nominate his enemy. Nobody will nominate someone that they can't control. Remember, SLS was nominated by President Yar'Adua. He probably believed that I can work with this guy. So then you now look at the professionalism. The point now is, how do we track back to that point where we could be marginally professional, where the president will not lean so much on the central bank governor? That's the thing. They will lean on him sometimes, They will, now remember that the National Assembly has had to increase the limit from 5% to 15%.
Yes.
They could even make it 50% if we know the kind of volumes that governments may need. You could then also say that, okay, maybe they should repay back after 2 years. They should kneel it out after whatever. Look, the problem I see in Nigeria is this, and I've often said this: we like to read things out of textbooks. If it doesn't occur in the textbook that we've read in secondary school or university, we don't believe it exists. And we forget that, look, we are supposed to be a sovereign. And when you're a sovereign, you should think for yourself. Sometimes you do things that are different from what other people are doing to survive as a country, as an economy. So the idea of central bank independence is a farce, indeed. And we can begin to look from one to the other. Maybe in the very developed countries where they don't have that problem. I'm just reading something now about UK economy. There's a lady that did a video, that they've done about $21 billion of fraud recently in the current government. And under Boris Johnson, they had about $9 billion. And nobody is questioning her. They gave a lot of COVID contracts to their friends and a lot of shenanigans that you won't hear. So we should, as much as we like to roast ourselves, look, we roast ourselves, but we shouldn't condemn our country. We have a country to build, and we move on. Those guys abroad that we like. But
Dr. Fashua, if you can hear me, Dr. Fashua, if you can hear me, should that be an excuse for perhaps wrongdoing when people do wrong?
It isn't. I'm just saying that, look, it's not an excuse, but you see, what I always come against is this air of nihilism and fatalism around Nigeria. We say, we say we are the most useless country in the world. Country is gone. No, it's not. Because other countries are not going to come and meet you to launder their issues, right? We are jumping into all of those places now. You understand? Issues are our issues, and I don't believe there's any issue that's so big that we cannot surmount, including some of the issues we have at the moment. Central bank, whatever, ways and means. Even this issue of debt, this debt that we're talking about, invariably, when you look at it from a very, very impassionate angle, realize that we don't have a major debt crisis. No, we don't. And, it's still down to the issue of debt to GDP. If you have ideas of how to lift your people out of poverty and you have big projects to do, then you will not be keeping your debt at 35% of your GDP when other countries are doing 100, 150, and they are still surviving and they're doing very well, and they're the countries that we're looking up to. That means we don't have ideas. If we don't have ideas, you keep it that way it is. Before this Emefiele issue and COVID and all of that, we probably were around 15, 20% debt. In the realm of companies, other companies should be looking to take such a company over, because the people who are running that company don't know what to do with their assets and their balance sheet.
Dr. Fashua, if you can hear me, because I want us to look at other issues. At this point, I don't know if you've also read about the 89 trillion naira stamp duty allegation, so to speak. But let's bring in the January MPC. I remember vividly, because I was at that MPC, I remember vividly a question that was asked around the 89 trillion naira. In fact, why I'm bringing this back is because I've seen it in the news again, and about 2 people asked me yesterday, that Nancy, how is this possible? And I was like, just take a look at it logically. If we have 89 trillion naira in cash, the Nigerian government will use it and settle our BC. You understand what I mean? So but let's bring back this video, and where the embattled CBN governors, Godwin Emefiele, was asked that question precisely in January of this year, and just take a listen to his answer, and we come back to that question. Let's take the video.
On stamp duty from the 2016 to date, the report that we have in CBN is this: is 370 billion 686 million 315,505 naira 28 kobo. Out of that, FIRS has disbursed through FAC, or Ministry of Finance has disbursed to FAC 226 billion 451 million 720,158 naira 88 kobo. And the balance in the account in CBN is 144 billion 234 million 595,346 naira 40 kobo. Went further, we said, look, banks, this is, we did a tabulation. The highest collection, and I will mention the name of the bank, the oldest bank in Nigeria, First Bank, collected 71.6 billion naira in 7 years. Their headed papers are all here, signed by them. So I truly don't know where 89 trillion is. But again,
All right, welcome back to the program, Moneyline with Nancy. It is, and my guest down there too, Dr. Tokpe Fasho, joins us from London. He's been with me at least for the last few minutes. Dr. Fasho, I hope you're still there. Dr. Sam O'Malley is joining me right here at the table. The President Chief Executive Officer, Rock Global Investment Network, London. So you're back from London. Tokpe is in London. All right, Dr. Fasho, let me get your response concerning the video we played earlier regarding the 89 trillion naira. That was Emefiele's explanation when that news broke earlier this year. What do you think? Is this something we should take hook, line, and sinker? Was that sufficient explanation?
No, well, again, I believe President Tinubu is a very pragmatic person. He doesn't have time for nonsense. However, it's so unfortunate that a lot of things are being pushed around. Like I said, people like a good lynching. The gentleman, Honorable Gudaje Kazari, is the one that has been pushing that. beyond his incoherence and all of that, the point is we also know him to be somebody who has all sort of phantom numbers in his head. We have to be careful the information we get from Gudaje, because they formed a committee, took this matter to Buhari and said there was 89 trillion. So I think President Buhari said, oh, go and form a committee and go and deal with it. But after a while, they decided to, according to Garba Shehu, after a while they realized that the guy was chasing the wind, and they decided to free the guy, quote and unquote, as we stay on the streets, But 89 trillion is a lot of money. Our national budget is not half of that. So how would we collect that much in ordinary stamp duty of 50 naira? However, I must also say this: when they brought the idea of stamp duty as an old tax that was unearthed by Buhari, but you see, they made a mess of it. Honestly, I must say this. President Buhari did a big disservice to Nigeria, a major disservice to Nigeria. If he knew that he wasn't up to that task, he oughtn't to have come to collect. And now he's saying that nobody should come and meet him to ask him questions. We're going to ask him questions. We don't have to put him in the dock, but he really wasted everybody's time in Nigeria, honestly speaking. So I think 89 trillion is a phantom number that people should generally, let's move on. But again, a forensic auditor can be sent out to many of these places that are supposed to be holding Nigeria's money. And remember, the new president is an auditor himself, has done some yeoman's job in the auditing world, so I believe that he knows what to do. Send people out, let's go and trace our money. They said there are several reserve. It's painful when you hear some of these things, but maybe they are true or not. There are several reserves accounts that but recently has opened several. I also read somewhere that a certain loan, he collected a certain loan and decided to open a personal account for himself somewhere in China. I don't know. I personally, I wouldn't want to discuss some of those things. It kind of ticks off something in my head. I don't think it's the right thing to discuss, So, and that there's another 200 and something accounts, or 400 accounts somewhere in the central bank. A forensic accountant will be forced now. So the central bank will not have any reason, any impetus to hide anything from anybody.
Let's go ahead. Dr. Fashu, if you can hear me, we just have a few minutes and I have Dr. Mali here. Let's take a look at the acting CBN governor now, who is Adebisi Shonubi, Adebisi Shonubi. Let's get his profile, guys, and let's quickly talk about him and perhaps what will be the expectations for this acting CBN governor, if there is really anything for him to do as acting, because we know this is the second person to. Sarah Alade acted when Lamido Sanusi was ousted. So what are also the expectations from the new CBN government? But let's quickly take a look. Lashodu Adebisi Shonubi, of course, was born in 1962. I've also seen a lot of things that have been going on, that he's a mechanical engineer. How can you get a mechanical engineer to come and be at the forefront of the CBN? But that's his profile there for those of you that perhaps do not know him that much. He has a BSc and MSc in mechanical engineering, masters in business administration, specializing in finance. He worked as a consultant engineer at McInd Associates, as well as marketing executive, Inland Computers, head treasury operations, Citibank, supervising consultant at Augusto & Co., deputy general manager, banking and operations, NBC International. Where else he did work in FCMB, vice president. There he was vice president, operations and information technology, director of information technology and corporate services, Renaissance Securities Nigeria, ED in Union Bank, in charge of operations, technology and services, managing director of NIBS. And NIBS is the Nigerian Interbank Settlement System. He was there from 2012 to 2018. From there, he became the governor operations at the Central Bank of Nigeria. That's from 2018. And when he was at NIBS, he was part of the people in fact, himself and his team were also integral concerning the biometric verification number, which is at the BVN. If we take a look at Shonubi so far, I must say that at least I've monitored many MPCs, and when the briefs are written, Mr. Shonubi seems to be on the hawkish side. But let me get your thoughts, Dr. Mali, just quickly. What are your thoughts on the acting governor, as well as your expectations for the new a next central bank governor, perhaps President Tinubu will still appoint, as we've seen in history too, because Sarah Alade was acting and he brought in another governor was brought in the person of Godwin Emefiele. So what are your expectations quickly? Because I'm looking at our time.
Okay, my expectation, I don't know what you have discussed, but the central bank is very critical in the economy of any nation. And the governor has two major roles. Number one, to protect the values of the currency, of the national currency. And two, to ensure that there is financial stability. And in doing that, he uses all the monetary policy tools that are available to him. So any governor, any central bank governor will have to possess two major skills. Number one, personal. And personal has to deal with leadership, management, skills, communication ability, and ability to lead people. Number two, of course, which is the major one, is the monetary policy knowledge. There are over 32 questions I would like to ask such a person.
32?
Yeah.
Please forward them to me if you don't mind.
No, they will engage me and I will use it.
Yeah.
I mean, 32. And he had to answer these questions, not just for himself, but to the outside world. The outside world want to know, you're not showcasing yourself for Nigeria, is how the outside world perceive you. Because it's the most important appointment in the nation.
The most important?
Yeah, because they manage the economy. And government.
So what is the role of the Minister of Finance in all of this?
Because
physical policy.
No, it's very physical. It's very physical of the finance person.
Yes, the role is fiscal.
But the monetary policy, you see, is the one that translates the goal of a government policy. The problem we have is that
what you're saying is that the government policies are transmitted.
True.
Are transmitted through the monetary policies. Is that what you're saying?
Yes,
government policies in the whole
are also the economy. Central bank is the manager of the economy, and whatever line of economy you belong to, if you are capitalist or you are whatever it is, you tell the governor, this is where I want my government to go like. I'm after tax, I'm not after tax, I'm liberal, I'm not liberal. Then the central bank governor has the skills to bring all the tools they need to achieve that. It must have some level of independence, because I think we employ people and we arrest them again. They're held as captives. The central bank government must be able to rise above. Do
you think it can be achieved? Because just before you came in,
yes,
I asked Dr. Tokbe that question: how truly can a central bank governor in Nigeria be independent?
It depends upon him.
Is it depends upon him or depends on the master?
No. The master gives you an assignment. And you are to advise. You see, the problem in Nigeria that
so if your master says if your master says we don't have money,
no,
like we saw during Buhari,
yes, you advise him truthfully. If he doesn't, you resign. I would not want to put myself in shame, because you are advising him from knowledge, from skill, from experience, and from what is internationally acceptable. That's the problem. You don't just say yes sir to whatever they say, because he has appointed you to manage the economy. Guess what? If the economy is going down, it's you are going to blame. You are the one to maintain the national value of the currency. It's your responsibility. You are the one responsible for managing this financial stability. So if inflation is going her way, if unemployment, anything that is going wrong, they hold it against you. If the economy fails you. Therefore, if you are giving this assignment to anybody, please let them do the job. Let them not be dragged into any politics or into any interest. And anyone who wants to be the governor of the bank should be able to walk away when those principles are abused.
Okay. Okay, Dr. Fasho, let's bring you in now. Last take before we go. What are your expectations from the new, of course, we have an acting governor. Do you think he would really shift anything? Do you think he can really move the needle concerning, if you also take a look at some of his votes at the MPC's hawkish tones, and what do you expect, assuming a President Tinubu appoints a new central bank governor?
Sorry, I wanted to ask you, what do you mean hawkish? Is he always voting to increase rates?
Yes, to increase rates. Yes, he's always voting to increase rates.
I don't know him that much. The issue of rate increases, I hope that he can also read some of our own outside, who are outsiders. The much they've increased interest rates, look at where we are. It hasn't inflation that much, so there's a need to think beyond rates. But I think what I've heard about him is a very, very strict human being. And I think his role is, part of his role will be to enable it that needs to be done to ascertain some of these numbers that we're talking about. And I think he's someone that has actually kept himself above the fray. I'm not sure he's somebody who has been jacked around or who can be jacked around over time, and neither by the outgone central bank governor. I think that's the reason why he was put there. So he will perform out mechanical engineering